All right, let's dive in. You wanted the scoop on Halloween, and boy have we got a story for you. We're digging into the Mysteries of Tradition episode, the haunting history of Halloween. And guess what? This spooky celebration goes back over 2,000 years.
Really puts those bags of candy corn in perspective, doesn't it?
You're telling me we're talking ancient Celts and a festival called Samhain, pronounced so-in. Forget trick-or-treating for a second, because this was a time when people believed the line between the living and the dead got seriously blurry.
Yeah, spooky doesn't even begin to cover it. But Samhain, it wasn't just about ghosts and ghouls. It was a huge deal for the Celts, marking the end of the harvest and the start of winter.
Okay, so imagine this. You're a Celt, the days are getting shorter, and you genuinely believe that spirits can just wander around.
Right, and not just any spirits. We're talking about the spirits of your ancestors, of nature, both good and bad. So what do?
To a party.
Sort of. The Celts would gather around these massive bonfires, maybe dressed in animal skins for protection, a little like early costumes.
Right, I read about that in the Mysteries of Tradition episode.
Yeah.
They also burned crops and made animal sacrifices, right? Serious stuff.
It was. They believed those offerings would appease the spirits, make sure the winter wasn't too harsh, that the crops would grow again next year.
Makes sense. I mean, if you genuinely believe that the veil between the worlds is thin, you'd want to be on the spirit's good side. But it wasn't all doom and gloom, right? There's that powerful image of villagers carrying flames back from the bonfire to their homes.
Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful one. Light in the darkness, warmth against the cold, and most importantly, protection from the unknown.
I get chills just thinking about it. But as with most ancient traditions, things started to change, especially with the spread of Christianity. You can't just erase centuries of deeply held beliefs, can you?
Exactly. Smart move on the part of the early church. They often absorbed those pagan rituals.
Blended the old with the new.
Exactly. Made the transition a little easier, maybe even a bit familiar. A great example of this, in the 8th century, Pope Gregory III establishes All Saints' Day on November 1st.
Wait a minute, are you saying?
Yep, November 1st, a day to honor all the saints and martyrs. But the night before, All Hallows' Eve. Well, we know what that became.
Halloween, that's so cool. So the Celtic fear of the supernatural got woven right into the Christian calendar.
Pretty much. But there's a shift. People are still aware of that thinning veil, but now, honoring saints, praying for the parted souls, that's their protection.
So fascinating how those beliefs evolved.
For
And that blend of fear and religion, you see it pop up again in traditions like souling.
souling.
Yeah, in England and Ireland, kids and the poor would go door to door praying for the dead, and in return, they'd get soul cakes.
Hold on, are you saying souling is like the ancient ancestor of trick-or-treating?
I know, right? It's all connected. But get this. Halloween's story doesn't end there. It takes a wild turn in the 19th century when Irish and Scottish immigrants bring their traditions to America.
And they did not come to play.
Right. Forget the cute, family-friendly Halloween we know today. Early American Halloween, it was wild. Pranks, ghost stories, and even divination games.
Oh yeah, divination games, trying to predict the future with apples or mirrors, talk about spooky fun.
It sounds like they really went all out. So we've got bonfires, costumes, pranks, fortune-telling. It sounds like Halloween had it all.
Pretty much. A real mix of ancient beliefs and a good dose of mischief.
But somewhere along the way, Halloween got a makeover. By the early 20th century, things shifted. People wanted a tamer, more family-friendly holiday.
Domesticated Halloween, some people call it.
Makes sense. So less rowdy revelry, more organized fun.
Exactly. Costume parties and parades started popping up, and trick-or-treating, well, it starts to become the main event, a safer alternative, especially for the kids.
So by the 1950s, Halloween as we know it, the safe suburban holiday, was born. Trick-or-treating becomes a huge deal, costumes get cuter.
It's amazing how traditions adapt, isn't it? Speaking of transformations, what about the jack-o'-lantern?
Oh, you mean the carved pumpkins?
Well, get ready for this. The original jack-o'-lantern, it wasn't a pumpkin at all.
Wait,
No, I'm serious. The original jack-o'-lantern, it was a hollowed-out turnip. And it all starts with this guy, Stingy Jack.
Stingy Jack. What did he do?
This guy, he was a trickster, managed to trick the devil, not once, but twice.
Wow, sounds like my kind of guy.
But his luck ran out. When Stingy Jack died, he was denied entry to both heaven and hell.
No way. What happened to him?
Condemned to wander the earth for eternity with only a burning coal inside a hollowed-out turnip to light his way.
So that's where the jack-o'-lantern comes from.
Yep, the legend of Stingy Jack. And when Irish immigrants came to America, guess what they found?
Pumpkins.
Way easier to carve than turnips. And so the jack-o'-lantern we all know and love was born.
It's incredible how those traditions adapt and evolve. And you know what else is interesting? The whole black cat and witchcraft thing.
Oh yeah, black cats, their reputation goes way back, all the way to the Middle Ages.
When everyone was freaking out about witches.
Exactly. Black cats, they were seen as witches' familiars or even witches in disguise.
So basically, they were guilty by association.
Pretty much. Those anxieties were so strong that the image of the black cat became linked to witchcraft, and it kind of stuck. And it ties into another big Halloween theme: ghosts. Remember those Celts believing spirits were everywhere on Samhain?
Yeah, and they even left food and drink out to appease them.
It's like the ancient version of trick-or-treating, isn't it?
Right, like those ancient traditions are echoing in our modern celebrations.
Yeah.
And speaking of celebrations, Halloween is not just an American thing anymore.
Oh, not at all. It's global.
Global. You mean people all over the world are celebrating Halloween?
Yep. From Mexico to Japan, Halloween has gone international.
Wow, who knew? But it probably looks different in other places, right?
Oh, definitely. In Mexico, Halloween coincides with Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, which is a vibrant celebration honoring deceased loved ones.
That's so beautiful. I've always wanted to experience Dia de los Muertos. It sounds so full of life and color.
It really is. It's all about remembering and celebrating those who've passed, not fearing death. And then you have places in Europe where Halloween is a more somber occasion, focused on remembering the dead and visiting cemeteries.
It's amazing how one holiday can have so many different interpretations.
It just shows how adaptable traditions can be, and Halloween, it's become this amazing blend of ancient customs, folklore, and modern pop culture.
It's like a global tapestry of spooky fun. But let's rewind a bit, go back to the Middle Ages.
The Middle Ages, back to the castles and knights.
And witches. We can't talk about Halloween without mentioning witches. I mean, they're everywhere, from fairy tales to horror movies.
They've become iconic symbols of Halloween, but their story goes much deeper than just spooky fun.
Right, because this was a time when the fear of witchcraft was very real.
Absolutely. Remember how the Celts believed magic was more powerful on Samhain?
Yeah, I remember.
Well, witches were seen as those who could control that power, and not always for good. So as this fear of witchcraft gripped Europe, those witchy images, broomsticks, cauldrons, spells, they become a big part of how people visualize Halloween.
So it's like those ancient fears about magic get mixed with the very real persecution of witches in the Middle Ages.
Exactly. It's a sobering reminder that behind the costumes and candy, Halloween has some pretty dark historical roots.
A reminder that sometimes the things we find fun and entertaining have a much darker side to their story.
It's important to remember that, to be aware of that complexity as we enjoy Halloween festivities.
Agreed. It's a good reminder to be critical about how we portray witches and challenge those harmful stereotypes that still exist today.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the history and honoring the real people who are affected by those dark chapters.
Well said. So as we move on to the next part of our Halloween deep dive, let's keep that complexity in mind.
Let's do that. It makes the story even richer and maybe a little spookier.
All right, are you ready to sink your teeth into some vampire lore?
Bring on the fangs. I'm ready.
All right, vampires, those creatures of the night. They're pretty much Halloween royalty these days, right?
Oh, yeah. Fangs, capes, the whole 9 yards. Vampires are a Halloween staple for sure.
But they haven't always been a Halloween thing, have they?
Okay.
I mean, vampire stories go way back, but the Halloween connection feels more recent.
You're right. Their rise to Halloween fame is pretty recent. Think late 19th, early 20th centuries as Halloween was becoming a big deal in America.
And I bet we can thank Bram Stoker's Dracula for a lot of that.
Bingo. Published in 1897, Dracula gave us a whole new kind of vampire.
Sophisticated, alluring, not just a monster hiding in the shadows.
Exactly. Dracula became a sensation, and that image, well, it seeped right into how we see vampires, especially around Halloween.
It's wild how a book can shape our view of monsters. Dracula made vampires cool.
You could say that, from classic horror films to those sparkly vampire romance novels, they've become part of our cultural landscape.
Especially around Halloween. What is it about vampires that we find so fascinating, even a little scary?
I think they tap into our fears, our anxieties about mortality, about the seduction, the allure of the dark side.
It's like a safe way to play with those darker emotions. And speaking of exploring, we've talked about Halloween's European roots, its American transformation. But Halloween is bigger than that now, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's gone global. While its roots are in the West, Halloween is a worldwide phenomenon these days.
It's amazing how one holiday can spread so far.
It's fascinating. Halloween blends with local customs and traditions in so many ways. Take Japan, for example.
Japan. I never would have thought of Japan as a Halloween hotspot.
It's a newer thing there, mostly influenced by media and pop culture.
So less about the traditional Halloween stuff, more about
Costumes. Think massive parades, elaborate costumes, but with a Japanese twist.
so more like cosplay.
Exactly. It's become this vibrant celebration of creativity and pop culture.
Mm.
Less about trick-or-treating, more about dressing up and having fun.
It just shows how adaptable Halloween is. It can be molded and shaped by different cultures.
Absolutely. Halloween in Japan is all about embracing that playful energy, and it fits right in with their love of anime, manga, and video games.
So cool. It's a reminder that even though Halloween has these specific origins, it can take on a whole new life in different parts of the world.
It really highlights how interconnected we are. Speaking of which, let's go back to Mexico for a minute. We talked about how Halloween coincides with Dia de los Muertos, but there's so much more to that connection.
It's more than just being on the same day, isn't it?
Yeah.
They both deal with death, but the whole vibe is so different.
Right. Halloween, it's spooky, it's about costumes and candy. Dia de los Muertos is deeply spiritual, family-oriented. It's about remembering and honoring loved ones who have passed away.
It's about celebrating their lives, not mourning their deaths. Right?
Exactly. Families build these beautiful altars, they prepare special foods, and visit cemeteries to connect with their ancestors. It's a really beautiful tradition.
And so different from how we approach death in the West, where it's often seen as something scary or taboo.
It's a powerful reminder that there are many ways to think about and process death. And Halloween and Dia de los Muertos, they both offer these unique perspectives.
It's fascinating how they can exist side by side, both dealing with that thin veil between the worlds, but with such different expressions.
It's amazing. And as Halloween becomes more popular around the world, we'll probably see even more of these cultural blends and interpretations.
It's going to be interesting to see how those traditions continue to evolve and interact with each other. But let's bring it back to America for a second. Halloween here, it's become a whole other beast.
You mean the whole commercial aspect?
Exactly.
Oh.
Costumes, decorations, candy, parties, haunted houses. It's huge.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Seriously.
No joke. This once niche holiday has turned into a cultural and commercial juggernaut.
It's everywhere you look, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
More elaborate costumes, those crazy yard decorations, and those haunted houses. They're like full-blown theatrical productions these days.
It's like Halloween has become this massive playground for our imaginations. And it's not just for kids anymore.
Not at all. Adults are getting in on the action, too. Costume parties, haunted houses, themed bar crawls.
It's like a collective need to let loose, a break from the everyday, a chance to embrace that inner child.
Exactly. We get to play with those primal fears, but in a safe and controlled environment. It's kind of empowering.
It's like Halloween gives us permission to be a little scared, a little silly, and a whole lot of fun. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, it's worth thinking about why Halloween has endured for so long. Why do we keep coming back to these spooky stories, these traditions?
I think it speaks to something deep within us. Halloween is this unique blend of fun, fear, and reflection. It lets us tap into our primal instincts, explore the darker side of our imaginations, and maybe even connect with something bigger than ourselves.
It reminds us that traditions are more than just rituals. They're expressions of who we are, how we see the world, and what we find meaningful.
Well said. So, as you put on your costumes, carve those pumpkins, and enjoy all those Halloween treats, remember that you're part of something much bigger.
It's not just about the candy and the costumes. It's about history, culture, and our shared human experience.
Now, before we send you off to enjoy all those Halloween festivities, we've got one final thought to leave you with.
So we've covered a lot of ground, ancient roots, global reach, the whole commercial shebang. But with all this spooky fun, all this history, what does it all tell us about ourselves? Why do we love this holiday so much?
That's a great question to ponder, isn't it? I think Halloween, with all its spooky stuff, actually points to something really human. Our need to connect.
Connect with ghosts.
Well, maybe. But think about it. We connect with the past through these traditions, rituals that echo through the centuries. We connect with each other through shared experiences like trick-or-treating, telling ghost stories.
And maybe even connecting with something beyond ourselves, something we can't quite explain.
Exactly, that thin veil between worlds, the supernatural, it's always been a part of Halloween.
So even if we don't believe in ghosts, we're still tapping into that sense of mystery, that ancient wonder.
We're giving ourselves permission to believe, even if it's just for one night.
It's like we're expanding what's possible, just for fun.
And that opens us up to new ways of seeing the world, new perspectives. It's a reminder that there's more to life than what we see every day.
So Halloween's not about escaping reality.
I think it's more about expanding it.
Embracing the unknown, acknowledging the darkness, but finding a way to make it fun.
Exactly. We confront those fears, but in a way that's playful, not terrifying. And that's empowering.
And let's be honest, part of the appeal is the fun, the dressing up, the decorations, all the spooky stuff.
Oh yeah, that childlike energy, that creativity, it's liberating. Halloween lets us be a little silly, a little mischievous.
And that transformation, it's not just about putting on a costume, is it? It's about transforming how we see ourselves, how we interact with the world.
I think you're right. It reminds us that even in the face of the unknown, even when things feel a little dark, there's still room for joy, for laughter, for a little bit of magic.
I love that. It's a powerful reminder that Halloween is more than just a holiday.
It's a celebration of life and all its complexity, its wonder, its darkness, and its light.
So as you're out there celebrating Halloween, remember you're part of something bigger, something that connects us to the past, to each other, and maybe even to something beyond.
Embrace the spooky spirit, honor the past, and most importantly, have fun.
And that wraps up our Halloween deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we unmask this incredible holiday. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop learning.